Hello, you courageous souls that came back for more. This is episode 2 of Ethnically Correct. Can we get a big hooray?
Woo!
Thank you so much for trusting us with this extended conversation, these tableside discussions about what it means to be an American through the prism of ethnicity. And my name is Alex Venegas, and I'm happy that you've joined us. And I am aided in this great quest by two amazing women, the first of which is to my right. Let's say hi to Taha Smythe.
Hello, good evening.
And just as a reminder, Taha, who are you and what do you bring to this table?
My name is Taha Smythe. I'm originally from the UK and of Persian descent and trying to bring a Middle Eastern perspective to our topics today. I'm also currently training to be a marriage and family therapist, working as a trainee at the moment, and looking forward to helping people and making meaningful transactions.
Excellent. To my left is Miss Winter White. And Winter, remind our audience who you are and what you bring to this table.
Hi, I'm Winter White. I am of African American Black descent, whatever you feel like calling Black people this year. And I bring to the table not only my perspective as an African American woman, but I'm probably going to be the person who will have to sift through what Tahu and Alex are saying, bring it down to those people who need a dictionary, understand it a little bit better. But also, I think I bring a little bit of passion from, my perspective. I am in corporate America. I am a technical trainer at a hospital as well as a blogger. So I have a little bit of a social media background as well. So hopefully I bring a little bit of fun to the table.
And we all need a little bit of fun in our lives.
We're very grateful to have you here, Winter.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So our first topic is around the idea of a name. So what is in a name? Obviously, we had very little to do with the choosing of our namesake. Our parents sifted through lists of possibilities. Sometimes they were influenced by friends, family, or whomever had a lot of hegemony in their lives, and a name was arrived at. And some of us have multiple names, others have just one. But, when we enter the professional world or when we enter adulthood, our name sort of carries weight, it carries relevance, and we grow accustomed to introductions, etc. But the reason why I wanted to posit this topic with my colleagues is the following. I always talk about both of you to other people who do not have the pleasure and distinction of knowing you. And so I say, yes, I have a good friend, and her name is Winter White. And I have a good friend, and her name is Taha Smythe. And invariably with the two of you specifically, and I'm going to start with Winter, they say, well, she must be Black. And so that gave me room for pause, and I asked myself, why do they arrive at this conclusion so quickly? Why do they jump to this assumption that you are of African American descent? And in Tahu's case, why is it that they have trouble with your name? Why is it that I have to spell it phonetically? Why is it that I have to give context and meaning, etc.? And at first, I thought this is a big burden. But then I realized this is an opportunity for me to educate people on the fact that a name is simply a way of distinguishing person A from person B. And the fact that Winter, your name is an alliteration, you're Winter White, 2 W's make for a recipe of a good alliteration and good phonetic sounds, right? And in Tahu's case, there is beauty in the way it sounds and in the way it projects, etc. And so I'm going to start with Winter. When I told you that story, you had quite an interesting reaction because you always thought that your name was not distinctively Black.
Yeah. And, my reaction to that was that way, not because I I felt any way about them identifying me as black, but the fact that it was that identifiable to people. I want to make the distinction that it's not about the fact that they said, oh, she must be black. It's that they even thought of a race to attach my name to in the very first place. And for me, it's, my whole life, my name has garnered some type of attention. And when we talked about, my name, last week I was saying how I really appreciated in my older age having the name Winter White because no matter where I go, people remember me. I was at a conference for work a couple weeks ago, and just based on being Winter White, I was stopping and having these social interactions with people because they remembered my name. I was able to, be remembered and have these interactions with people because it was like, oh, there's Winter White, and that felt good to me. I want to be remembered. And growing up, I hated my name because kids made fun of my name. They said, so my name is Winter White, and kids used to say my middle name was Ain't. Winter Ain't White.
Oh, that's awful.
Goodness.
I know, right? Really clever, but yeah, kind of hurtful. So for me, as I've grown up, it's been the opposite because people remember me more so because of my name. And so for me, a name, more so than whether it's ethnically driven, it's important that a name be memorable, that it be phonetically pretty, because I feel like that's my name. So.
Right. And so you don't feel any kind of humiliation because someone says, oh, that name couldn't belong to a person who isn't black.
No, you know what? I don't. And I find it really funny. So if my name was Shaniqua, people would automatically know that I'm black. But what's wrong with that? If they did, if they said that girl is black by her name, and
right, why does that matter?
Why is that a negative? Because if there was a guy named Barry Goldstein, we would know that he was Jewish, but there would be no negative connotation behind that name. So it's how we look at black people more so than the name, right? Are we looking at black people in a negative light, or are we putting a judgment call on specifically the phonetics of the name? No, we're looking at black people as negative when we say, oh, that girl's name is Shaniqua in a negative way.
Very presumptuous.
Yeah.
So you hear a name and then you presume that person is of a certain origin, though you could be completely wrong. I mean, Winter White could just as easily be somebody who is Caucasian. Why does it have to be an African American name? So it's an assumption that people bring with them when you say a name. If you just say Alex, for example, you think, okay, so that's Alex, but actually Alex's full name is Alejandro. And then all of a sudden, that has a completely different meaning. It's bizarre.
Yes, and people will sometimes, when they realize that that's my full name, it's like they have to pronounce it with so much gusto and
Alejandro.
So much ethnic flair, and that sometimes bothers me because it's confining and constricting, and I don't think that it does anyone any good other than to make the person uttering my name with that kind of flair feel like they are, sympathizing with my ethnic plight.
And there is nothing to sympathize with, really. There shouldn't be. It's like, oh no, I'm sympathizing because you have an ethnic name. That doesn't even make any sense.
Right.
But people automatically do that because it's their assumptions. And when you come from a place of assumption, well, then you're just also going to have judgment with that too.
And this has happened, throughout history. When you think about how many people at Ellis Island had to change their names to assimilate to the dominant culture, how many people, because they wanted to have success in Hollywood, shortened their names, came up with brand new names so that no one could associate these negative perceptions about those people. And I know that when I went from third grade, I was still in the English as a second language program. When I went to fourth grade, my teacher, Barbara Villani, bless her heart, she was an amazing woman, a great teacher, sort of asked if that's the name that I wanted to carry in the class. And so organically, I think as a response, I said, no, I want to be Alex now that I'm in an English only classroom. And it's funny how I responded to what I perceived to be a need. I thought, I need to be Alex from this moment forward because I'm now assimilated, acculturated. And the Shahs of Sunset, for example,
Absolutely, yeah.
right? A lot of them
Yeah.
came from Iran in you know, after the hostage crisis. Their families came here and they settled in Beverly Hills, and a lot of them took on different names. The Asian Americans who have had the similar
Right.
journey take on different names, and so it really is something. There is something to say about what we perceive to be as acceptable in terms of names.
And it's not uncommon for Middle Eastern people to change their names. Actually, I know very few Middle Eastern people who haven't changed their names. And precisely for that reason, because it has terrible connotations, particularly if also you're trying to get citizenship or you're trying to become or assimilate into Western culture. The first thing you do is change your name. Isn't that interesting?
Well, it's interesting that I feel African American people have created names because they want to identify. You know, it's the total opposite. Whereas some cultures do not want to identify or make it aware that, you know, I am Mexican American, I am Middle Eastern. African American people have these names, Shaniqua and whatever other name, you know, there are out there, to say I am African American. I almost feel this is a way for us to say, this is my culture, this is who I am. And I almost feel it's done a little unknowingly sometimes. You
Interesting.
know?
So there's a pride with the
There's a
name as
pride,
well,
of course.
which is great if that can be, you know, accepted. That's a great, wonderful entity in itself to have a pride attached with a name. My name is very interesting, obviously quite unusual, uncommon. I spent a lot of time having to come to terms with my name. People couldn't pronounce my name. They couldn't place my name. I had so many nicknames at one point, actually, that as endearing as it was, I thought that perhaps I'm going to lose my identity because I had so many different people calling me different names.
Well, I've had to stop myself from calling you Tay Tay a couple times.
I think I can live with Tay Tay.
I want to say Tay Tay.
And I, you know, it's absolutely fine. I really enjoyed it. I don't find, I don't have a hard time with it. It's, you know, I take it all in my stride. But it's very interesting. Is for a long time, it really worked against me, particularly when I was growing up. People couldn't pronounce it. They definitely couldn't spell it. You just feel like you don't fit in. You know, it's not a common name. People don't know what to say or do with it, and you know, it doesn't help sort of when you're going through that awkward, especially those awkward teenage years, adolescent years.
Oh my God, yes.
It's one more thing that you have to contend with is your name. You know,
Yeah.
so I didn't like it for a very long time, and then as I grew older, I learned that actually it's unique, and that's kind of everyone is unique in this life, and a name is something to be very, you know, proud of, not to shy away from. But I think anyone who has a unique or unusual name will have gone through that process at one point.
It's funny that you say that because, you know, I used to feel the same way about my name. You know, I used to want my name to be Samantha because I loved Who's the Boss. And I wanted to be like Alyssa Milano, and I loved the name Samantha, and I wanted people to call me Sam. And so I just wanted to blend in. And now, after having this name and I stand out so much and people remember me, I think some of the jobs that I even have gotten in my past have been because people probably want to see who named their daughter Winter White. You know,
Right.
I really feel like that.
And that's what I've been asked. I said the comments have been in the following light: who would do that to a child?
Yes.
Who would do that? And I said that's so heavy-handed of you to make that kind of comment. But you bring up a good point. A lot of times it does have implications in the job market what your name is on a resume. There have been studies that have shown that, for example, there could be a guy whose birth name is Jose Gonzalez, but if on a resume he puts Joe Gonzalez, all of a sudden he gets more calls, more interviews, etc. So I think there are real life implications. And what I encourage our listeners to think about is, what kind of prejudice do you associate to certain names? And do you find yourself sometimes making pejorative assumptions about people just based on their name without having seen them, talked to them, engage with them? And our clarion call here is to inspire you to take a second and ask yourself, is this assessment about a person's name going to be to their benefit or to their detriment? And we take this opportunity to remind you that we are on Twitter at Ethnically Correct, and on Facebook. Our group is called Ethnically Correct. Join this conversation. Talk to us about your experience growing up and what your name said about you to other people, and your experience in negotiating name calling in the playground and in the club scene, at work, at home, etc. All right. So thank you for the great discussion around that topic. Our second topic tonight is something that Winter is bringing to the table, so we'll have her introduce the topic.
So as we're creating our podcast and we're thinking about what is our logo going to look like? What is our tagline going to be? Who are we? We came up with a tagline for Ethnically Correct called "Be brave enough to start a conversation," or that says, I'm sorry, "Be brave enough to start a conversation that matters." And so that tagline got me to thinking about whether or not people are comfortable having conversations based around ethnicity and race. I want to know, are you guys surprised when your friends or your coworkers or even family members open up about their beliefs? Are you comfortable having these conversations yourself? Some people aren't comfortable having these conversations. If so, why are you uncomfortable with that? What was this topic of was this a topic of conversation in your own home growing up? I feel like this is actually something that I'm experiencing right now. I have friends, particularly a friend who will not discuss race with me. She is white, and whenever we bring up the topic of race, it could be something like, I'm experiencing this thing at work, and I think that it might be because I'm Black. I can make that declaration, and she just doesn't want to talk about it. She kind of shuts down. I don't want to talk about race. I don't want to talk about anything going on in the world that has to do with race. She's uncomfortable with it. And for me, I have felt, I feel a way about that. It's a little hurtful for me. And, we talk about everything else. We talk about love. We talk about, relationships. We talk about money. Fears, all these things. But when it comes to race, she will not talk to me about it. And I wondered how you guys felt about that.
I think for a lot of people, race is such a fragile and delicate conversation to have. And there's a real fear of offending somebody through ignorance or just a lack of knowledge. And I think that's what happens with a lot of people. They have, experiences, but they just don't want to offend. They don't want to say the wrong thing. They don't want to hurt someone's feelings. So by avoiding it and kind of, pretending like it's not an issue, it doesn't even exist, is their way of, feeling that they can come to terms with it. But what's really ironic, and this comes up actually a lot in my work at the moment, is when, the days of blatant racism, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but it may not be as we know it. However, we have microaggressions of racism that are so obvious and evident in our society, and one of them is precisely that. By not speaking about race, by pretending like it's not an issue, it doesn't exist, it's not even in our society at all, that is in itself very hurtful and also extremely ignorant, because you are completely dismissing and denying someone else's experience. But it's that fear, it's that fear of, I don't want to offend anybody, so therefore, and I don't know enough about this, so I'm not going to say anything.
And a lot of times I think people hide their true emotions behind this blanket notion that they don't want to brace the subject. I think Obama's election into the presidency of the United States really spawned this narrative that we were living in a post-racial society, because once and for all, the United States of America, which had condoned the idea of slavery several hundred years back, was now in the position to elect an African American man into the highest elected office.
And a glorious time for the U.S., really.
Correct.
A real trademark moment for the U.S. And also in an international perspective, the U.S. was, like really held in such a high
esteem.
Yeah, it really
Right.
was with Obama being elected.
But then what really started to settle in was the idea that people had believed in their hearts, that they almost had imagined that we were in this glorious state that was heaven-like, but that was all in the collective imagination. In certain parts of the country, people were irate that a black man was in the highest elected office, and they started local grassroots campaigns to defile him, to make any kind of legislation or any kind of program that emanated from his office a failure. With the ideas and the lingo and the discussions around Obamacare, etc. Really, there was a very underlying tone of racism, right? This is going to give access to healthcare to people that really don't deserve it, etc. And I think when you withhold something like active discussions of race, you're basically saying, I don't think this topic matters, and so therefore I'm not going to contribute. I'm not going to contribute because if I talk about it, I am affirming you in your belief that racism exists.
Which is uncomfortable.
Yes.
Totally. And in my mind, I thought there was a little guilt behind not talking about race, because then I have to say, at least for my situation, that the scales are unevenly balanced. I have to look at that, and maybe that might make me feel guilty as a white person in society. You are going through this. I do not have to go through this, and I feel badly about that. And I don't want to feel guilty because it's not my fault that I'm born white, that I have privilege. And so if I look at that, maybe I'll feel guilty. Maybe I'll feel bad about this. And you don't know how to feel, because if I feel guilty and if I feel bad, there's nothing I can do about it. Presumably, there's
And
nothing.
also for about race, discussions about race is uncomfortable. It's an uncomfortable topic for a lot of people. It's triggering. And generally, people like to stay away from things that are uncomfortable, because if you have to actively work at something uncomfortable, it's easier not to. And as people, as human beings, we prefer to go the easier route.
So I have a question for you guys, because I wonder what conversations are had about Black people when Black people aren't around.
Mm-hmm.
So have you ever had an experience where you've had to confront blatant racism or an undertone of racism? Has anything like that ever happened to you?
Absolutely, and I was thinking about this when we were discussing this topic. So I was standing outside of a line at a club in West Hollywood, and I was approached by two Caucasian guys, and they asked me if I knew how to get access to a certain substance. And I said, I do not, because I don't consume said substance. I said, but there is a gentleman, a security guard at the door, who I think is a directory for people that might trade in the substance. And they said, oh, no, we don't talk to Black people. And
wow.
I literally was floored. I could not believe that those words had been uttered. And here's my take. I have a lot of white friends, and all those white friends, I think, are very open and very loving of people that are Black, Hispanic, Middle Eastern, etc. They've had opportunities to have meaningful interactions with other races. They have slept with other races, so they really have gotten to know them intimately in more ways than one. And I do think sleeping with somebody of another race really does give you a very unique perspective.
It really does.
Okay,
That could
but
be a whole nother topic.
That's
though.
a whole other topic.
we'll get
right.
to that one. Don't worry.
Right. But there are individuals who have never really had meaningful experiences with people outside of their own race. They've never had a real meal or have driven in a car for 2 hours with someone other than someone of their own group. And so I really told these guys, I said, I cannot believe that being gay dudes that have been subjected and subjugated for a very long time by the society, that you would not understand that your racism, that your prejudice is exactly of the same caliber as the society that condones your behavior and your lifestyle. And I think one of our responsibilities collectively as people of color is to constantly be ambassadors and to educate people and get them to the point where they understand that they cannot be passive in the way that they go about spreading opinions and holding ideas and judgments about other people without first-hand knowledge and experience.
I couldn't agree more. And it's a real disservice to yourself if you have never come outside of your community of one type of ethnicity, whatever that may be. And this goes both ways, people from ethnicities and also people who are called. If you've never mixed, intermingled, you've never spoken to a Latino, a black person, whatever you want to call, if you've never done that, well, my dear, you've kept yourself in a little encapsulated bubble, and it's a real disservice to you. It doesn't inform you very well. It also doesn't serve you very well.
Can I just say one thing? I'm going to have to disagree with you, Alex, about one part of what you just said.
I'm ready. Oh my God.
I know, right? We disagree about something. Yes, we need to have conversations that matter. Yes, we need to be open to dialogue. But I am not here to teach white people how to view black people or here to explain to them how their ignorance is incorrect or they have a shallow sense of whatever. I'm not here for that. I think there's enough information out there that they can do that on their own. I am here to just live as a black woman. The burden that makes me feel is really supremely heavy. When I go on, say, my social media, when I go on Facebook, it makes me feel really heavy when I have people on my timeline who spout, an undertone of racism. And I just can't. I don't have the time to make a comment and point out on every post how wrong they are or give them another perspective. It is so, it's draining.
You can't educate everybody.
I can't.
It's
However,
impossible.
I respect that. And I'm the kind of guy that likes to have the burden, right? Mm-hmm. One of the reasons why we started what I thought that this podcast had a reason for being is I was tired of hearing Latino voices on television and in film that I thought were not helping mainstream America understand Latino people, right? I wanted a different voice to be heard along the radio waves or through the network or whatever that was not the heavily accented, Gardner or that sort of subservient role. And I think Winter, even though you may not be 100% aware, your voice in this podcast and your eloquence and your opinions are definitely educating people on the fact that, you just want to be a regular human being that wants to live life at its fullest, and you are a professional, you take care of yourself, you take care of others, and you're a contributing member of society, which is already debunking a lot of myths that people may have about black women.
I agree. Okay.
Right?
I can get behind that one.
So it's really, I think education can be seen as active, where you're proselytizing
rather
or where
than
you're getting in
complacent
front.
education.
Right.
And psychoeducation is so important. It's a real area now that people are really investing in. Just psychoeducation, getting people to speak about things, understanding. From understanding and education comes power and better informed decisions. And this is a real area which is absolutely imperative for human growth and as a society as a whole. So it's becoming a very popular activity that's going on from corporations in mental health organizations, especially in a lot of parenting classes, just making people aware, because a lot of people actually just don't know. They really don't know. They never got the information. They never got the memo.
Yeah. And some people are lazy too, and they don't want to know.
Yeah,
so we can
that as well.
You know.
Yeah. And being an active voice, I think, will definitely help everyone. And if you're listening to this podcast, I hope that we made you think about how you perceive people and whether you're comfortable discussing race, whether you're comfortable having these discussions with your colleagues and especially with your family, because I think family is where a lot of this starts. And challenge mom and dad, challenge your sister or brother, and discuss how you go about the world assessing people and making calls. And we want to hear your personal stories. Follow us on Twitter at Ethnic Correct and on Facebook at Ethnically Correct. For Winter White and Tahu Smythe, I'm Alex Venegas. Please join us next time. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Bye.